Shabbat Shalom, everybody. So I'm toward the end of my midrash on Rebecca. I wrote an elaborate Shabbat email. I hope you read it. If not, I want to remind you why I began working on this idea. It's been in the back of my mind, I think, since about 1997 or 98. And that was when I refigured out the wrestling match that Jacob had in coming back to Canaan. It does not say it was an angel. In fact, as I've shared my teaching here with a few people in Israel, I said, it doesn't say angel. They said, yes, it does. I said, it doesn't say angel. I said, yes, it does. I said, pull it out. They read it, they look at it and say, with a look of, did somebody change it while I wasn't looking? And they say, it was always taught it was an angel. It doesn't say angel. It says ish, which means unidentified human being. That set me on a path back in must have been 83, 84, when I was studying archetypal psychology, that I was convinced that there was not an angel, obviously. It was Esau. I've been teaching that way ever since. Then my question became, I think by the late 90s, how did Esau go from murderous rage to changing Jacob's name? So it wasn't until the late 90s I began to see that he had a healer, he had a guide, he had a teacher. It could only be Rebecca. So the midrash on Rebecca, I think reflecting my just beginning counseling practice, how is it that one can bring healing to another person? And so as I've developed it, and it's become more and more elaborate, it's been great joy. And as I wrote in my Shabbat email, it's also been a sense of self-discovery, which I think all midrash is self-discovery guided by an attempt to weave into the text a narrative. Remember, midrash runs right under the surface of the text. It's not a deeper meaning of the text. There's no claim that midrash is about the text. The midrash is a testament to human depth and human imagination that is sparked by the text. If you read the classical midrash, and I think we will, I want to give you some examples of other midrash. There's actually a big set of texts called the Midrash. There is a book of Midrash on Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, written by completely different authors. And there are other texts of Midrash, for example, Midrash Tanchuma, Mechilata de Rabbi Yishmael. There's several of them. So when I was a rabbinical student, I tried to read all of the midrashim on a given Torah portion. It's quite exhausting, took a lot of time, but I'm glad I did it. So let's get to my midrash on Rebecca, where we are now. So to catch you up a little bit, Abraham knows about Rebecca at the end of Genesis chapter 22. It says, and Abraham was told that Rebecca was born. Rebecca is in Abraham's mind right after the Akedah. And very soon he sends Eliezer to find a wife in Padan Aram for Isaac. And we get a sense that Abraham already knew, maybe Eliezer knew, maybe even Rebecca knew. So there's an elaborate story in Genesis 24 of Eliezer going up there and trying to find the woman. It also says in Genesis 24, something I never saw before, that Abraham sent an angel to accompany Eliezer on the way. The next midrash I might do is the midrash of this angel who keeps appearing in the story. The angel saves Hagar twice. The angel leads Eliezer to Rebecca. I think this angel saves Isaac at the Akedah, and is more or less an occasional family counselor, sometimes acting at the behest of the divine of God, and sometimes acting contrary to the divine will, which is a very, very strange idea. In any case, my sense is that Eliezer found the exact right woman, brought her down to Canaan. She sees what terrible shape this family is in, and she commits herself to bringing some healing to the family, to Isaac, to the tribe in general that's been traumatized by this event. I think Abraham right now is been forcibly retired to a tent right outside the community. Because we see both Isaac and Ishmael attending Abraham's funeral in Genesis 25, I believe that Hagar, the mother of Ishmael, was there. And it also says at the end of the story of the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, that Isaac went to live at Be'er Lachai Roi, the well of the living one who sees me. That's always connected to Hagar. So there's all kinds of evidence in the text that Isaac goes to live with Hagar and his half-brother Ishmael. The rabbinic tradition identifies Keturah, Abraham's second wife, as Hagar. The text doesn't say it. The Talmud says it, and here's one place where I'm entirely deferring to the rabbinic text instead of just an examination of the literary dimension of the Bible, which means there's now a small group that contains Hagar, her son Yishmael, Isaac, the son of Abraham and Sarah, and Rebecca, and maybe even the angel is hovering nearby. Now, to bring us up to speed, Rebecca comes to Canaan. She's not able to get pregnant. We see this right after the funeral, by the way. This is discussed. She asks Isaac to entreat God. God allows God's self to be entreated, and she becomes pregnant. You maybe remember that the pregnancy is very difficult. There are twins rousting about in her womb. She doesn't understand it. So then it says that she goes, Lidrosh et Adonai. Lidrosh et Adonai. It's a wonderful term. Lidrosh is to darash. It's the exact same word we use to study the depth of a Torah portion, a drasha or a drash. Midrash literally means seeking. So I won't do it. But when someone says, let's study the Midrash, you mean the book of seeking? It just sounds a little bit pompous. It's actually not. It's the exact translation of the word Midrash, the seeking. Seeking what? As Rebecca sought the word of God at some kind of oracle, the rabbis placed the oracle in the Beit Midrash, the house of seeking, of Shem and Ever, two characters from Genesis. The rabbis just made it up. It's a wonderful image that there's a a house of seeking in Canaan, open to everyone. Shem and Ever, they're the ancestors of the Hebrews, but they're not Hebrews themselves. They're ancestors of many tribes. In fact, Shem is the ancestor of all the Shemites, of all the Semites, as it were. So it's a school that anybody can attend. So in my imagination, what classes does she take? She takes classes in counseling because she has to work with Isaac and the family. She takes classes in archetypal psychology, and she's going to start taking and teaching classes in parenting to the soul of the child as soon as she has children, which of course she does. And what she goes through with those kids qualifies her to teach that class. As we move forward, what does the oracle tell her? There are two nations in your belly, bebitneach, and then it says, and two peoples, one from the other. I think it says yiparedu, will separate, and it says the older will serve. I don't have the exact verses, but the older will serve the younger. If I can compress two verses into one verse. So she knows, again, I think tragically for her, that the family tragedy continues. Now, I think for her, the family tragedy begins with Cain and Abel. Probably a well-known narrative. There was the struggle over the birthright. But what happened in Cain and Abel? Cain is the firstborn. What does Cain do? He becomes a man of the field, Ish Adamah. That's exactly what God told Adam he would be doing, or Ha-Adam, the human being. We'll call him Adam. When they were expelled from Eden, Cain goes into the work that God told his father to do. So Cain, the firstborn, sees himself as, without the official designation of having the birthright, he's automatically the birthright, meaning favored by his parents, favored by God. Then it says that Hevel was born. Abel brings a sacrifice to the divine, as does Cain. Hevel brings from the flock. Cain brings from the ground. And then it says, I mean, quite awfully, that God sha'ah. Now, lish'ot here means to pay attention to. It's also Hebrew word for an hour, but here it means to pay attention to or to heed. So God heeded Hevel's sacrifice, offering, but he does not heed Cain. This makes Cain very angry. Why? Theme of my email and part of tonight is he felt entitled to it. Now, one reason I wanted to write about entitlement is oftentimes when I teach people about the wisdom mill of how to mill down anger. Remember, the wall of virtues is to hold it inside, restrain it, not repress it, and then take it to a wisdom mill. When you're trying to work down anger, you ask yourself, what exactly was my need, expectation, entitlement, or demand? Because when we get angry, we feel resentful, it's always because a need wasn't met. So instead of focusing on what the other person did, we have to articulate to ourselves in basically one sentence exactly what our need was. I want to share with you, when I do this wisdom mill, which means reducing anger, and I say to people, what exactly was your need? It's really interesting how much trouble people have saying what their need was. For example, I'll say a husband puts his wife's shoes away and she can't find them, and she's furious where her shoes have gone. And he says, oh, they're here. And she yells and says, who told you to touch my stuff? And who told you to clean up after me? I put things where I want them. And he starts to, instead of saying, honey, I'm sorry, which is a good script, he says, but I meant good. I meant good. One of the worst things you can say to an angry person, by the way, because they'll just double down and turn up the volume. So I always advise people, when someone's really upset with you, say, I am so sorry. Let me think about what I did. And you can always talk about it later. So in any case, let's say I've counseled plenty angry wives, plenty angry husbands, and other people in family. Is if you want to not speak in anger to your loved ones, first you have to want it. You have to will it. You have to imagine it's possible. That it's possible for people to reduce speaking in anger. And so therefore you have to say to yourself, I will not speak in anger. I will, when I feel the anger coming up, I will not speak, take a breath, go to a script, which is, I'm really upset right now. I need about 10 minutes to calm down. That's a pretty good script. And when you go away, you go to the mill and say, what exactly was my need, expectation, entitlement, and demand? So sometimes it comes out as, I need respect. I need them to think about me before they do anything. I said, that's a pretty big need, expectation, entitlement, demand. Let's make it small that only applies to this case. And this case, it came in pretty much a literal case. It wasn't shoes, it was something else. I need my husband not to move my personal items, right? It took about 10 minutes to get there because there's so much anger that the volume, the intensity of the anger produces sentences that are gargantuan sentences because the sentence matches the degree of anger. So when you say, I need respect, that's a lot of anger. When you get down to, I need my spouse not to move my stuff, pretty moderate sentence. So it's interesting that the anger goes down to the level of the articulation of the need, expectation, entitlement, demand. Right? This one was, I expect, or since it's my property, I'm entitled to my spouse not moving my stuff. Now, as you focus on yourself, then your anger at the other person goes down. And when you do focus on your need, 3 questions you ask are, is my need moral, rational, and useful? I'm reviewing this for those who have not taken my Wisdom Works courses, by the way, which is coming in January. I'll have a lot more to say about it, but right now, if you haven't taken it, or you want to study the revised curriculum, which we'll be sending out, it'll really be worth your time. And you'll own the course forever, which means it's not going to be Zoom. Then we send it out. It's good for 2 weeks, and we'll explain more about that as we come up. So when you go down, is my need moral? Yes, it's moral that I don't want my spouse to move my stuff. Why do I put in moral? Because many people need other people to agree with them. So sometimes when I look at a dispute between spouses or between parents and children, the need was, I want my spouse, I want my child to agree with me. I've identified that as a not moral need. Why? Because people don't have a moral duty to agree with us, nor do we have a moral right to browbeat them into agreeing with us. I mean, there are some things you have to work out, like what the family's going to do. You can't do two opposite things at the same time. You can't go to the mountains and to the beach, let's say, for the day off. You can't send your kid to one school and another school. It's going to be one or the other. So some things do have to be worked out, but not through yelling, not through screaming, not through threatening, not through browbeating. That's not moral, because we actually don't have that right. That really is an issue of morality. Do we have the right to browbeat another person to the point that they agree with us? But let's say not moving the stuff. Oh, it's moral, clearly. It's rational, right? That a person could look at your stuff and say, I'll let them know it needs to be moved, but I'm not going to move it somewhere they don't know. But again, some people say, oh, I'll just do them a favor. But let's say they already know there's a rule, don't move the stuff. Now, for the offended person, is it a useful need? Well, at that moment, it's causing anger. Okay, so right now, it might be, let me just put that need on pause until we have a calm discussion and sort it out. That doesn't mean that the need, expectation, entitlement, or demand that was disappointed was not moral and reasonable. It's just that getting angry about it is not going to make anything better. So I don't think I've emphasized enough that our needs very well may be and usually are moral, rational, and useful, but they ought not be a springboard to anger, because that will make everything worse. You got to come back another day and you have to talk it through. That's part of what I call the reasoning dimension of Wisdom Works Level 1, virtue, rationality, and reasoning. And I want to spend a lot of time on reasoning conversations, because that's where relationships oftentimes go very, very wrong. Okay, back to Rebecca and Esau. Rebecca sees her son Esau in a foul mood. He wants to murder Jacob. I didn't go over this in the Midrash because everybody knows the story, but just for now, Rebecca was behind the tricking of Isaac. It's very obvious in the text. Why? Because of the oracle she got. She got the oracle that the older will serve the younger. She said, how do I make that happen? Why doesn't she just tell Isaac straight up, I got this message from God that the older serves the younger? In my archetypal understanding of Isaac, he says, this God who told my father to slaughter me for a sacrifice, I don't want to hear what this God has to say. I don't know if I can believe this God. And if this God does say something, it's probably going to end up in someone getting killed. So don't talk to me about God. there are in my coming up as a rabbi, when I was doing bar mitzvahs in people's backyards, I'd get a phone call, go meet with the family. I'd say, where's your husband? He doesn't want to meet with you. I said, why not? He said, he really hates religion. He really hates rabbis. By the way, the wife was typically not Jewish or a convert. And I say, how's this going to go? And she said, I'll make sure it goes fine. He just really doesn't like religion and doesn't want to get mad at you because you probably believe things he doesn't. I said, okay, as long as the service is going to go well. So Isaac is like the archetype of guy. I don't like religion. I don't like God. I don't like rabbis. I don't want to talk about it. Okay, so I've actually seen that very thing in my life. So she knows she can't bring it up to Isaac. So she has to do it on her own. Now, is it moral to trick your husband? Well, if you're very sure that God does not want the Jewish prayer book to say Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Esav, which is what it would have said had it not been for Rebecca, she says, I got to get in there. So therefore, it's not a wrong if one deeply knows that at some level, ideas like right, wrong, good or bad, the just, the fair, the true, are rooted in a metaphysical realm, These terms cannot be empirically demonstrated. I hope this is clear to everybody. If I look at a person beating a person, okay, that person may have tried to rob them, and they keep trying to get up and rob them again. So the person needs to beat them until they stay down so they can get away. But if I just see the beating, I can say, well, that's wrong. And someone says, you need to see what happened beforehand. That guy jumped on that guy with a knife. So the empirical fact of something happening doesn't make it right or wrong. It really depends on, who the instigator is, who the aggressor is somebody fighting for themselves. It's not empirical. So therefore, it's not empirical. It's not in the physical world. And I know people who are atheistic don't like to hear this, but it has to be beyond the physical, beyond the empirical. It connects to a value system, and value systems cannot be evaluated empirically in the laboratory through natural sciences or mathematics. I think that's obvious. Values cannot be substantiated by mathematics, natural sciences, empiricism, laboratory. The word I hesitate throwing in, therefore, they are metaphysical, beyond the physical. I hold that back because I can flip people out. And I say, let's just agree that values are not tangible, but they actually do exist. All right, so the world of value does exist. So let's say, as we think about this, as Rebecca is considering doing this, there is a value, that promises be kept. That when people rely on a law or a custom, one does not change the law or custom. Esau's relying on this. He's also relying on his parents not getting in the way of his getting something that belongs to him. But the Bible has shown us that that's not the whole story. So I want to show you a verse that you probably all know, but I want to show you anyway. Hold on. I think I have to go to my browser and make that front and center in my browser. Y'all just hold on for a second. Here we are. And then I go back to You Find People. And I bring this up. All right. So no, that's the wrong screen. I'll stop the share. You go back to the correct screen. Hold on. So Yosh will edit all this fumfering around out. Gonna go back to my browser again. Okay, there's Safari front and center. I don't know why I couldn't find it. I'm gonna go to share screen, and here it is, and that should be it. Here we go. Okay, now look at this. Right after the sons are born, when it says Isaac loved Esau, I mentioned last week extensively that Yitzchak is still grieving for his brother Ishmael, who was banished from the tribe those many years ago, and Esau reminded him of his brother. Rivka, you might say, therefore loved Jacob. He had to have some parental love and actually loved Jacob. Okay, now this is when they're born. Now we jump forward 17 years. They're now older teenagers. Then it says, Yaakov was cooking a nazid, it says here a pottage, and Esau showed up, min hasadeh v'hu ayef. So let me start with an archetypal understanding of Esau here. I'll try to keep it brief because I have a lot more to say. One of the most beautiful teachings I ever heard, I was in rabbinical school, where a teacher said, why was Esau ayef? Why was he tired? He was tired that he was a fraud. He was tired that he was an imposter. He knew that he was not fit to lead the tribe. He knew that the only reason he was going to lead the tribe was an accident of birth. Now, he's a valiant warrior. He's a great huntsman. He's essential to the tribe, but not the leader. So he feels as he walks around, looking at the day when his father Isaac dies and he receives the birthright, that people are talking behind his back. Oy vavoy, what's going to happen when that guy's running the whole tribe? He's a great guy. He's not going to be a good shofet, deciding cases of justice, organizing the tribe, assigning responsibilities. It's a very complex thing being a tribe of probably more than 1,000 people. So some part of Esau knows he's an imposter. He's not qualified, and it's a burden for him. So according to this interpretation, he knew he shouldn't be doing it, and it made him heavy, tired to be doing it. From an archetypal perspective, this is an archetypal moment in life. I remember one case in particular. There was a young man lived with a prosperous immigrant family, Israeli family that had become very prosperous in their real estate business. Two brothers in the business, and he joined the business and came to me and said, "I'm utterly miserable. I don't want to be doing this." And every time I say don't want to do it, they all tell me, "Get with the program. You have to be a certain kind of person. You got to do this." I said, "What do you want to do?" He said, "I want to produce music." It's okay. Ask your family if you can take a 6-month leave of absence so you can get your head together, because he was drinking and rebelling in many different ways. So I said to him, "Do you have enough money to set up a little studio in your apartment and ask friends if they have anybody who wants to be produced?" He says, I said, "Do you know enough to get going?" He says, "Yeah, I know a little bit." I said, "Okay, so find a singer with a guitar and try it out." So he did, and we met a couple more times. He says, "Okay, I'm on my way." He sent me a few recordings that he did. I thought they were pretty good, but what do I know about music? And according to him, it got better and better and better, and he found better and better people. And then I said, "It's time to go to your brothers and your father and say, I don't want to come back to the business. I want to produce music. Please come to my apartment and watch." And they said, "Okay, what if you can't make a living at it? You're good." He said, "I don't know what I'm going to do, but I want to give it 5 years." And they figured out a plan, and that's the last I heard. So I assume it went well. Now, I've met many, many people that don't want to do what they're doing. They don't feel it's right for them. It's not their passion. It's not what they're after, and it tires them. Now, this is a bit different from Esau because he inherits, but that's actually not quite far from people that I counsel. Is the person who's supposed to go into the family business. One person, it was the car windshield business and all kinds of different things. And the person said, "It's not what I want to do in my life. I know it supports the family. I know it's a great business. I know I should, but I don't want to." And this can really, really weigh deeply, heavily, and sometimes even destroy a person. I can give you so many cases, and it's really sad that a person doesn't wake up to this opposition, sometimes till their 40s or 50s, and that's when they start drinking. That's when they start taking drugs, because they can't get out. They've, quote unquote, wasted their life. It's a very serious thing. So according to this wonderful interpretation that I heard, he arrives at the site of the cooking ayef, existential exhaustion. And Esau says to Yaakov, "Haliteni," which means, let me gulp some of that down. Let me gulp some of that down. Ha'adom, ha'adom. I said this red pottage. And that's why they call his name Edom, red. His name was actually Esau, which apparently does mean red. But this is one of those little etymological insights scattered through the text. Now, Isaac, in my mind, knows about the birthright because Rebecca has shared it with him. So she's shared with him. There's something out of balance in this family. Things are not right. It's the family secret. It's the root of why there's so much arguing in the family. There's a family secret. The family secret is you were not born in order. And I've had an oracle from the divine, but this has to be put in order. I don't know how I'm going to do it, she says to Jacob. I don't know when I'm going to do it, but it has to be done. So Jacob takes the initiative and says, "Sell me today your birthright." It's a bit astonishing that one can actually sell birth order. So it's not actually by the order of birth, but by the right to what comes with the order of birth. So the same with the Bechorah as the blessing, not the actual birth order. What is Esau? Yomer Esav, hine anochi holech lamut. Lama ze Bechorah. Lama ze li Bechorah. What does the Bechorah, the birthright blessing, mean to me anyway? Now, we've covered this in depth in prior years, but look what Rebecca says when she realizes She's having a difficult pregnancy. She has twins in her womb, and therefore she knows she's carrying yet another version of the family tragedy that began with Cain and Abel, arrived to Isaac and Ishmael. She wanted to heal this family, and she's carrying within her the next instantiation of the tragedy. From a Jungian perspective, it also can be understood as we carry within us impossible conflicts. We have within us coincidence of opposites. I want to be this, but I want to be that. I want to be here, but I want to be there. I have this value and I have this value. Now, on the surface of our lives, you can't take a car and a boat at the same time. It's either the car or the boat. You could put the car on the boat, but you're still on the boat. And people live with lives not lived. They lived with choices they've made, but there was another choice they could have made. And sometimes the choice that we didn't make, the road we did not take, spoils the road we are on because we feel loss and regret. Sometimes people forget all the reasons they took one road because of the grief of the other road. And that goes to so many parts of our lives that there's a something in us that says, if this is so, if I have such loss and grief, why do I exist? I can't get over this. I can't get over the loss and grief I feel in my life. So she says, Lama ze im ken lama ze anochi. If so, lama ze anochi, literally, why this, why am I? This being the case, why am I? Or this being the case, what is my life about? Should I even exist? Because the pain and grief is too great. These exact same words are quoted by Esau right here in verse 33 when he says, right here, Lama ze bechorah. What lama ze li bechorah? Why do I need the bechorah? So Rivka's sentence is brought down to Esau, meaning there's a sense that he's despairing that he has the birthright. He's grieving that he has the birthright because he knows it is not true to him. I recently had a counseling session when a person was describing all the pain in her life and in her marriage, and very constricting marriage, and the social roles that she had on herself were suffocating her. I said, what is your core desire? And she says, I want to be authentic. I'm living an inauthentic life. In many ways, my life has been engineered by my parents and his parents and so many things. And she says, I don't know what to do, but I think I'm going to die if I live one more day of this inauthentic life. I said, there's a lot of choices ahead of you, but let's try to, kind of build out some authenticity, like make your prison cell larger. I think I've used the metaphor, plant a garden in the prison. But let's think about it. You can either Shawshank your way out, build a garden in the prison, but let's try to reduce the suffering. And that was a very interesting experience. Truly a person whose greatest suffering in life was, I'm not living authentically. So we can take this lamazeh of Esau, I'm not living authentically. So what does he do? He says, I'll sell the birthright. Now, Yaakov's serious. V'yomer Yaakov, hishavali kayom. Swear to me right now. V'yishavalo. And he swore to him. Vayimkor et bechorato leYaakov. And he sold his birthright to Jacob. Now, here's a wonderful staccato verse in the Torah. Yaakov natan leEsav lechem unezid adashim. And Yaakov gave to Esau bread and the lentil stew. It says, Vayochal, Vayesht, Vayakom, Vayelech. He ate, he drank, he got up, and he left. Now, the second part, thus Esau despised the birthright. Sometimes I feel that that's a later author wants to make Esau look bad, but it could just be an insight. that by Yves can be, it was lowered in his eyes. I'm not sure, but that definitely was his state of mind. I don't want this birthright. Get it off of me. So therefore, when we go forward and we look at uh, the the what made me people think of the theft of the birthright, and I remember hearing this off and on. Well, stealing's wrong, but look what Rebecca did, and they don't know anything about the oracle that she received, nor this verse from Exodus chapter 25. So there's a lot of background here that puts a lot of doubt with the idea: was the birthright stolen, or was it being redeemed? Okay, now what does redeemed mean? Taking something from where it doesn't belong to where it does belong. Was it redeemed from being with Esau? Now, there's a wonderful a word that I found I haven't found anywhere but the Zohar Hadash, which is part of the Zoharic literature, and it's talking about the suffering that comes when you have something. It's called a tophes in the Zohar. A tophes in modern Hebrew means a form that's not yet been filled out. But the word is used for the size of the garments that Esau received from his father Yitzchak, who received them from Abraham, all the way down from Adam. So there's a myth that when God made clothes for Adam, they were supernatural clothes. They went from one generation to the next. And when Isaac gave them to Esau, they didn't fit. So it was a tophes, it was a form that could not be filled out by Esau. So the clothes themselves were looking for the right person so the tophes could be filled. It's an extraordinary little verse in the Zohar Hadash. And I think precisely this case, and precisely what many people go through. They try on a life, it doesn't fit. And they say, this life might fit somebody else, it just doesn't fit me. I just remember an anecdote when I worked in the legal section when I was in the Marines overseas in the 3rd Marine Division, and I was a court reporter for a while. So I was the one who transcribed trials. I didn't like it. It was not, I mean, I was good at it. I was, I had success. But I didn't look forward to the work. And my commanding officer said, Finley, there's another guy, who would sell his soul to become a court reporter. I said, really? He says, yeah, would you mind if he came in and we moved you out? I said, move me out to what? He says, Japanese jurisdiction. I said, what's that? When a Marine gets arrested by the Japanese police, they're basically AWL from their unit. So we have an investigative unit that interfaces with the Japanese police, finds out what's going on. We write a report up and get it to their unit. I said, I love that idea. I would love to be in, it's called Japanese jurisdiction. This guy came over and took my desk. I went up to Japanese jurisdiction, and I had a great, wonderful, I think 6 or 7 months up there. Someday I'll put it in my memo wars. So in any case, I was a good court reporter. The clothes didn't fit. When I went up to, it was actually up on a hill. When I went up to Japanese jurisdiction, it fit perfectly as if they took my measurements. So you may have had this experience. Many children have the experience where parents say to the kid, well, you have to do this. You have to study this in college. You have to go to this college. We paid a lot of money to get you in. And the kid wants to say, the clothes don't fit. But the kid can't because the parents are so invested in it. So this is a very, very deep archetypal story that I plan to bring into my Parenting the Soul of the Child class, which means don't force your children to wear a role that doesn't fit them, because the suffering will often be very great, and the bill will become due when they're in their 40s, when they realize they've never ever had any agency in their life. So parents have to be very careful about forcing a role onto a child. So I don't want to go into the elaborate story of the because you all know it, of the Jacob putting on fur, pretending that he's Esau and so forth. But the end of the matter is that Jacob gets the birthright, Esau screams and cries as if he doesn't remember what happened with the red stew. And Jacob's gone, and now the origin of the Midrash on Rebecca. What does Rebecca do? So last week, what I taught was, again, this is something purely fabricated by my imagination. She says to him, this birthright thing is more complex than you can imagine. Going back to Abraham and his brothers, Abraham, Nahor, and Haran, Abraham was the firstborn, right? He didn't get the birthright. Who was supposed to get the birthright? So this is what I heard. The youngest brother, Haran, the youngest of the three brothers. And Haran died. It didn't go to Nahor, the second son. He wasn't qualified. So this is Finley's reconstruction. So where did the birthright go? To Milcah, my grandmother. She's the one who received the birthright. And Esau is astonished. He never heard any of this because it's a bit of a family secret how this birthright, goes through the generations. She said, then my father, Bethuel, received the birthright. And then I was born with a brother, Rebecca, Lavan. And she said, Lavan thought that he was going to get the birthright because he's the male. My father gave it to me. And Esau says, you have the birthright of your tribe? She says, what are you doing here? He said, well, when it happened, I could feel that Lavan was murderously angry. And Esau says, like me? Pretty much like you. So you're like Jacob? She says, yeah, I had to get out of town. And that's what Jacob did. She said he had to get out of town. And, in my reconstruction, Esau's face goes to his hands. He says, I'm doing the thing all over again, right? This whole family tragedy of Cain killing Abel, Sarah fearing the rivalry when Abraham dies, casts Ishmael out, and now Esau wanting to kill Yaakov. He says, I'm part of it. This is not what I want to do. And she shares with him, our lives are sometimes driven at this level by a destiny, by something not empirical called a birthright. We might just say psychological forces that we can't see drive us, but they don't determine us because we have a higher self. We have free will. So it is true we have drives, natural drives. We have ego states, subpersonalities that drive us. And then there's a moment when you say, I actually want to lead my life. I want to lead my life. And that's an existentially profound moment when you say, I am not the product of my past. I'm not only the product of my personality, my genes, my family, my traumas. All of those contribute to who I am. Ultimately, this is something you've heard me teach many times. Ultimately, who I am is a person I want to be tomorrow. That's the ultimate reason why we are as we are. Personality, genes, childhood, everything else. Your history of all the decisions that got you to where you are today, plus the decision what you want to be tomorrow, which means your focus is not what other people did, but rather what kind of person do I want to become. Now that decision, in my mind, has to, the will for that decision has to be re-energized every single day. So many people make the decision to change their lives, but they don't fuel the will. And that's a whole other thing in and of itself that I'll talk in the wisdom work classes. How do you actually strengthen the will to be true to your decisions? It doesn't properly belong in that class, but I will certainly cover it until I can move a little bit further in the second class on rational understanding of the inner life. So she explains all of this to Esau, and he understands. He says, the rage is gone, by the way, in my telling of the story. The minute he realizes this bechorah, this birthright, is actually ironically called the blessing of the birthright because it's sometimes a curse, sometimes a curse to the person who gets it, sometimes it's the curse of the tribe because of all the envy that comes around it. So then as she's counseling him, she has to get him to the point where, first of all, the anger's gone and it reduces very quickly. He says, it's happened before. It happened to Abraham. He didn't get the birthright. And he gets out of town. The third brother dies, and I'll have some more to say. I'm not saying that Abraham murdered Haran. Okay, I'll tell you what I think. There's a Torah law that if people are working, let's say with a pickaxe, and the head flies off the axe, like to fly off the handle, and it hits Haran and kills him. Now the Bible said if there's no intentionality, it's not murder. Okay, as long as you didn't loosen the head of the axe, it wasn't murder. So it happened. Again, this is all Finley's midrash. So there has to be an investigation. So Avram goes to Terach, his father, and he says, "What happened?" He says, "We're out in the field. We're pounding away at a rock that we have to move. We got to break it up, and my axe flew off the handle and hit Haran." And so Terach, who himself, by the way, he was on his way to Canaan. So God, I'll write all this out for you someday. The first time God said, "Lech lecha ma'artzecha," to the land that I will show, that was Terach. Terach was going from Ur Kasdim to Canaan. He stops off in Haran and stays there. I've written about it before. I'll remind you again when we get to that Torah portion next year. So Terach did not fulfill his destiny. He avoided his destiny, but he's still in charge of the tribe. So he says to Abraham, this is my reconstruction. Did you think about it? I know you didn't mean it, but did you think about it? And in my reconstruction, Abraham says, to tell you the truth, I hope this doesn't get me executed. When I was hitting that rock, I was thinking about hitting him. But I definitely did not loosen the handle. But I feel guilty. And so Haran had the birthright. Abraham didn't. Abraham felt the rage of Esau, his grandfather. This is my reconstruction. Okay, so let me take it deeper. Terach reports this to the angel of the family. The angel keeps floating around right above this family. The angel takes it to God, who's very busy arranging other things, and all the angels on their missions, and they show up to the divine court occasionally. And the angel says, God, kind of a moment of your time. We got a problem down in Canaan. You remember that? Yeah, God says, yes. One of my favorite tribes. He says, well, the birthright guy died, gave it to his daughter. God says, unusual, but that's okay. The oldest brother apparently killed him unintentionally, but he's living with terrible guilt, and the whole tribe thinks he's responsible. It's going to end really badly. God says, you know what? That blessing that I gave to Terach, go ahead and give it to Abraham and let him think he's the chosen one. And Terach says, the angel says, I don't think he's exactly qualified. God says, you know what? Do it. It's not the perfect solution, but it's the best I think I can do. Terach says, the angel says, Roger that. And then God says, Abraham, lech lecha, get out of town. So my reconstruction is, get out of town. You're not guilty. Go start a new life, but you can't stay here. So that's my background of Genesis chapter 12. Back to Esau and Rebekah. So he says, I get it. I'm not angry. I get this birthright thing. God told you that the older will serve the younger, and I'm not supposed to get it. I'm reconciled to that. I don't want to live with anger. I don't want to live with the murder on my mind. I need to get this through. And she's able to really help him. Because when you make a decision to let go of grief and loss and anger, they don't stay away. That tree of death grows in the night. Every morning you got to trim that tree, trim that tree, trim that tree. Help the tree of life grow and help the tree of death reduce. It's daily work. So Esau finally gets there. He says, I will. And he says, one day he says, I am. I actually am a resolved human being. Now, Rebecca has been holding back on this. And she says, now we have to do the next thing. She says, what is it? She says, your brother is also suffering. I've had word back and forth from my homeland. There's all kinds of intrigue going on. My brother also lost his rage to kill me, so we're okay. But he's making Jacob's life hell, and he's going to be leaving there soon. So he's going to be coming back here. Now remember, your brother feels terrible guilt that he's a trickster. We gave him the name Yaakov because he had his hand on your heel when he was born, and that's become his identity. I'm the usurper. I'm the guy trying to climb over somebody else. I'm the opportunist. I'm the trickster, the guy who dressed up like his brother. She says that stigma is going to stay with him his entire life until something happens, some great intervention that will change the course of his life. And Esau says, what do you want me to do? She says, okay, here's my plan. Hear me out. So in Finley's reconstruction, the wrestling that occurs in Genesis chapter 32, I'll put that on the board in a minute, is all planned out ahead of time by Rebekah and Esau. It's part of my Midrash on Rebekah, who created such an elaborate, intricate plan. Rebekah. Now, this is my Midrash on Rebekah. So why Rebekah? She was really good at making up Jacob to be Esau. It wasn't just putting some animal skins on his hands. There's all kinds of things that had to be done. Even though Isaac was going blind, she still had to make sure that he didn't have a spontaneous healing and then the jig would be up. So she said, look, I'm really good at masking, but here's how you got to play it. You're going to attack your brother and wrestle him. And she said, I know from the angel that Jacob's been having dreams his whole life about fighting his demons, right? The demon of guilt, the demon of regret, the demon that says he's an imposter, that he's a trickster, that he's not a serious person. He, puts his brother's clothes on to get a blessing. And she says, so just as Jacob was disguised to get the blessing from you, you're going to disguise to give him the blessing. And Esau says, I'm up to it. Totally in. What a transformed human being. From rage of having the blessing taken away from him to the commitment to grant the blessing as an act of love and grace for his suffering brother, and in gratitude to his mother, who he realizes is a truly wonderful, wise, deep, loving, very clever person. So they arrange it. This is Finley's Midrash. She gets themselves, here's what you got to do. You got to attack him middle of the night. Now, this is going to go from, it's going to be the kind of wrestling that you're not really trying to rob him or murder him. You're going to wrestle with him. And what's going to happen is his dreams of wrestling this demon are going to come back. So he's going to realize he's in an archetypal moment. Now, I want to appeal to the audience. There are moments in my life, truly moments in my life, where I sit there and I say to myself, like Esther, my God put me in this place. Everything I've done up to this point in my life has been about this moment. Many other moments, but I'm the ish mafteach. I'm the key person here. And what I do next is going to partially determine the course of the life of a person or a family, because somebody really relies on me. I can just feel really not a burden, but a sense of I'm playing a role, and I'll do the best I can, because they're asking me, what do you think is right? Right? Not what do people feel. I mean, you've seen a lot. What do you think is right? And I'm the person. By the way, I've had people at core moments of my life give me a blessing that turned my life one way from the other. And I have eternal gratitude for the care, grace, love, and blessing that people have had for me and us. So Esau realized, I'm the only one that can do it. I'm the only one who can do it. Therefore, I have a duty to do it. I don't think we need to study Genesis 32 again. So he attacks him in the middle of the night. They're wrestling and wrestling and wrestling. And Jacob gets wounded in the match. And this is a very big part of male spirituality, as men carry the wound. Again, I'm not saying this is true in all cases at all times. I think it's the thing that Robert Blythe talks about, I remember in the men's spirituality movement in the 1980s. Men carry a wound inflicted upon them by their father. So Esau has to inflict a wound on Jacob. And in a sense is, carrying the wound justifies me as a man. Now, I can't speak to women's spirituality. Maybe there's something similar, but there's definitely a thing of men with their fathers, that the father has to both bless them, inevitably wound them, and their job is to get over the wound. So he has to wound Jacob. Jacob then for limps. And then the guy says, okay, I have to go. This is part of the thing. He says, I have to go. Dawn is breaking. He is masked. Jacob rises to the moment. He says, I won't let you go unless you bless me. So Jacob fell right into it because he understood, like the moment with the stew, it wasn't about a guy getting fed. This was an existential moment of transformation. He said, he felt there's something else going on here. I'm going to try this out. I won't let you go until you bless me. He was ready for it. Esau and Rebekah had gone through this. They drilled the script to the most economical phrase they can. Notice the economy of expression of Esau, the Ish who attacked Jacob, clearly not an angel. And he said, "What's your name?" That's a rhetorical question because, it's like, we've been fighting all night. Who are you again? What is your name? He wanted him to say it. Yaakov. Yaakov, which means the person who's trying to climb over the brother in the womb, the guy clutching onto the heel of another. And Esau says, it's not your name anymore. Your name is now Yisrael. And then he explains it. It's a folk etymology. It doesn't really what the etymology is. The Hebrew word Sarah can mean, for example, you can say, Shalom Soreh. It's like can create the atmosphere of a situation. So Yisra can mean create a situation. Sar, a minister in Hebrew, is from the same word. Some people translate Sarah's name as princess. It's some word of authority, in this case, achieved authority. And if we want to use the word wrestle, fight, challenge, that's within the realm. It says, your name is Yisrael, either one who fights against God or who fights for God. Your name is Yisrael. And then it says, Kisarita im Elohim v'anashim v'tuchal. Because you have struggled, challenged. Elohim, for me, this is my interpretation, the thing that happened back when your mother was pregnant, our mother was pregnant, and God had you birth out of order, which has created this moment. The family tragedy is our mother had to engineer this. That's why we're here. And so the question is, many people say, why couldn't God just make us born in the right order? Why put us through this? And there's no way to figure that out. I mean, if the God can create all this, can't God just put us in the right order? What has all this been about? Kisarita im Elohim. You've struggled with that. You're struggling with it. V'im anashim, that probably has to do with Laban. Vatuchal, and you can be victorious. You're able to do it. Yisrael, Kisarita im anashim, im Elohim, v'im anashim, vatuchal, and he blessed him there. That was the blessing of Esau. Jacob had received the blessing of his father. He had received the blessing of God. Now he has the blessing of Esau. Who's standing in the shadows watching this whole thing? She had to see it, right? She planned it so carefully. She's looking at Esau going, exactly, good, that's exactly right. Wow, oh my God. So this thing comes off. Esau takes off. She meets him and she says, you did such a great job. I love you so much. You have changed the course of your brother's life. Wow, I'm so proud of you. They walk off hugging each other. Jacob gets up and says, wow, it's lifted. It's gone. I feel better for the first time in my entire life. And then he goes and joins his group. There's more to say about what happens next. I've explained all that when I've done drushes on Torah portion of Vayishlach. I don't need to do that now. But I'm going to remove my spotlight. So thus for me, concludes this version of the Midrash on Rebekah. For me, it's been an incredible journey. As I study the text, all kinds of things come up in the text I have never seen before. It's been a great joy of self-discovery. I've been very moved about what my subconscious has created. Like when it came out, I said, it's a really good story. I'm gonna cry when I think about this. It felt like it didn't come from me, that it was dictated to me. Thank you for being with me on this 4-week journey, understanding that my subconscious is struggling with the text. And I want to answer my question, how did Esau heal? And because I came at it open, I've discovered things I never thought I would see. And it's been so satisfying and so healing and so deep for me. So thank you for being on on the journey with me. All right, so thank you so much. I will now, I'm going to stop the recording and let's see. Okay, so I've been asked, what do I mean by the daily work of strengthening the will? I can't go in tonight, but the first thing, the introspection to realize that your will for your new path is dissipating. You can feel it. You can feel whether you're on a diet, trying to get back in shape, learning a musical instrument, change your emotional patterns. You get up one day to do your daily practice and you realize, wow, the will is not there. Okay, so I take a lot from Roberto Assagioli's book, The Act of Will, ACT of Will. Second half of the book, which I've taught in detail before in an advanced class in Wisdom Works, which I will do again. There is a process of going through, it's 8 steps on decision making. Now, this is not decision making like creating a decision tree. This is decision making as in knowing that it must be done and shaping the will for it to be done. The book is called The ACT of Will. Many people have said to me, it's a very difficult book, hard to get through. I've gone through a few copies of it. I've read them to tatters. So I will teach that book again. Now, either I'll teach a class in it or we will just put up independent teachings. One thing we're going to do is when I want to teach things, I don't have to wait for a class. I'll just put up 6 or 7 sessions. We'll load it up to the Teachable website. You can buy the course even if it's not going to be a live webinar. All the live webinars are going to be put up on Teachable. Some will be available. If you attend the webinar, you own the class as long as we keep the website up. And we'll put things up that are not part of a class. So I will be teaching The Act of Will by Roberto Assagioli. So just, you can get the book, The ACT of Will. I suggest read the whole book. And then when you get to part 2, it's the actual stages of willing. So it's entirely worth your while. And I will be teaching it. So thank you for that question.